Think about the absolute worst fight you've ever had with your partner. You know, the kind of argument that just completely derails your entire evening.
Oh, yeah. We have all been there.
Right. But what if I told you that fight didn't actually happen because of what they said to you, but simply because the air conditioning in your house was broken and you were physically hot?
I mean, it sounds crazy, but it's entirely possible. We usually treat human desires and our personalities like they're these static, unchangeable traits.
Yeah, we say things like, oh, I just have a short temper, or I am absolutely not a morning person.
Exactly. We treat our behavior like a fixed setting on a machine. And it is incredibly comforting for us to categorize ourselves that way, because it makes our choices feel predictable.
It takes the pressure off.
Right. If you're just a person with a short temper, then your outbursts are just a permanent part of your identity rather than a temporary reaction to your environment.
But then you step into the world of applied behavior analysis,
Yeah.
and suddenly that fixed setting is revealed to be a complete illusion.
A total illusion.
We're looking at a behavioral landscape that fluctuates minute by minute, driven entirely by these subtle, invisible shifts in our environment. So welcome to today's deep dive for behavioral intelligence.
Glad to be here for this one.
If you are joining us, you are likely staring down a very specific, notoriously tricky mountain, the board-certified behavior analyst exam, the dreaded BCBA.
It is a beast of a test.
It really is.
Right.
And our mission today is to conquer domain B, specifically section B.17. We are going to identify and distinguish between establishing operations, or EOs, and abolishing operations, which are AOs.
And to map out this behavioral landscape, we're pulling the foundational mechanics from a really solid stack of study resources today.
Yeah, we've got the Behavior Analyst Supervisor, or BAS, mock exams, the BAS 6th edition study guide, and of course,
the Cooper text.
The definitive Cooper applied behavior analysis text.
The holy grail.
Exactly. And the ultimate goal here is to just demystify the heavy clinical jargon. We're going to break down exactly how these operations affect the value of a reinforcer and your behavior. And look at some real-world puzzles, plus the single biggest trap that students fall into on exam day. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Before we can even touch establishing or abolishing, we have to understand the parent concept, right? The big umbrella term here is motivating operations, or MOs.
Right. So every motivating operation is an environmental variable that always has two very distinct simultaneous effects on an individual.
Two effects.
Yeah. The first is a value-altering effect, and the second is a behavior-altering effect. You really cannot grasp human behavior until you understand how those two mechanics operate in tandem.
So wait, if I'm tracking this, is an MO essentially just like a volume knob for my cravings?
A volume knob. I like that.
Like, is someone just sitting inside my brain, turning the dial up on how badly I want a cup of coffee at 2 p.m., or turning the dial down on how much I want a heavy meal right after Thanksgiving dinner?
Well, the volume knob analogy gets you halfway there. It definitely turns up or turns down the value of the coffee or the meal. That's the value-altering effect.
Okay, so what's the other half?
The tricky part, the part that trips people up, is that the same volume knob also bypasses your conscious decision-making and directly controls your physical actions.
Wow, okay.
It simultaneously changes the current frequency of the behavior that has historically gotten you that specific reinforcer. That's the behavior-altering effect.
Let me push back on that, though. Doesn't wanting something just naturally mean you'll try to get it?
Yeah.
I mean, why do behavior analysts need to separate the value from the behavior so rigidly?
It seems redundant, right?
Yeah, like if I want a coffee, I go get a coffee. It feels like we are splitting hairs by giving them two different clinical labels.
Well, separating them is actually the entire foundation of creating an ethical, effective behavioral intervention.
Yeah.
Because the value-altering effect is entirely internal.
Meaning we can't see it.
Exactly. It's a measure of how effective the reinforcer is to the organism in that exact millisecond. But as clinicians, we cannot physically measure your internal desire. I can't put a stethoscope to your brain and hear how badly you want coffee.
Right, that makes sense.
We can only measure the behavior-altering effect, which is the actual observable physical action. We're looking for the evocative or abative effect on your current behavior.
Let's lock those terms in for the listeners because they are literally everywhere on the exam. Evocative meaning it brings the behavior out, it provokes it, makes it happen.
Yep.
And abative meaning it suppresses the behavior, shuts it down.
Spot on. And the crucial distinction to memorize here is that MOs alter the current frequency of behavior.
Current frequency, not future.
Right. This is fundamentally different from consequences, like reinforcement or punishment, which alter the future frequency of behavior. If you want to change what someone is doing right now, in this very moment, you have to manipulate the motivating operation.
Let's put that volume knob to the test then. Let's talk about what happens when the environment cranks that volume all the way up to a 10. This is the first half of our Domain B topic, establishing operations, or EOs.
So an EO is the specific type of motivating operation that increases the effectiveness of a reinforcer. The value goes up.
It establishes the value.
Exactly. And because that value is artificially inflated by the environment, it exerts an evocative behavior-altering effect. It forces you to engage in actions that have successfully secured that reinforcer in your past.
And looking at the behavioral mechanisms, it seems like EOs are almost entirely driven by one core biological state, which is deprivation.
Deprivation is absolutely the ultimate biological driver. When an organism is deprived of a stimulus, the neurological value of that stimulus just skyrockets.
There's a highly relatable scenario in the BAS study guide we can use to visualize this evocative effect, specifically regarding sleep.
Oh, the sleep deprivation one, that's a great example.
Right, so let's say you only get 4 hours of sleep on Tuesday night. You wake up on Wednesday, and your body is in a severe state of deprivation. That physical lack of sleep is the establishing operation.
It drastically increases the value of sleep. Yesterday, a nap sounded nice, but today, a nap is the most highly effective reinforcer in your entire world.
The value-altering effect is totally dominating your nervous system. But the EO doesn't stop at just making you feel tired.
Not at all.
You don't just sit in a chair quietly wishing you were asleep. The EO evokes bizarre, immediate behavior. It makes you reach over, grab your phone, cancel your morning gym session, and set your alarm for 2 more hours.
You might even call in sick to work.
Yeah. The deprivation evoked the specific behaviors that historically produce the reinforcer of sleep.
And what's fascinating here is how we can observe this mechanism being manipulated intentionally in clinical and household settings all the time. Think about the classic puzzle involving a teenager and a preferred item, like a car.
Oh, the classic truck scenario from Mach 3. So let's say your teenage son loves to drive your truck, but he absolutely refuses to clean his bedroom.
A very common household standoff.
Right. So instead of offering a bribe and saying, clean your room and I'll give you the keys, you simply take the keys away.
Yeah.
You restrict his access to the truck entirely for a few days.
Which artificially deprives him of his highly preferred item.
Exactly. You temporarily increase its value. You have successfully engineered an EO.
And the behavioral consequence of engineering that EO is what's really fascinating. The teenager is now highly motivated to engage in behaviors that might historically secure access to the truck.
He might suddenly, without even being asked, start doing the dishes, taking out the trash, and yes, finally cleaning his room.
Right. The restriction didn't just make him miss driving, it fundamentally altered his immediate observable behavior.
It's an incredibly powerful tool. But if deprivation drives EOs and turns the volume up, we have to pivot to the exact opposite environmental condition.
What happens when we've just had way too much of a good thing?
Exactly. The other side of the exam topic, abolishing operations, or AOs.
So if the EO is the accelerator, the AO is the brake pedal. An abolishing operation is an environmental variable that decreases the effectiveness of a reinforcer.
The volume turns down.
Yep, the volume turns down.
And while EOs are driven by deprivation, AOs are driven by satiation. You've had enough, or maybe you've had entirely too much, of a specific stimulus.
Satiation literally changes the chemistry of the moment. Because the value of the reinforcer is decreased, the AO exerts an abative, behavior-altering effect.
Meaning it reduces or completely suppresses the behavior that previously produced that reinforcer.
You got it. And the clinical applications for this are where the true magic of applied behavior analysis really happens.
There's this fascinating clinical example in the sources regarding non-contingent reinforcement, or NCR.
Oh, this is a perfect example of an AO in action.
Let's paint the picture for the listener.
Yeah.
You have a young child who has learned that hitting their peers is the most efficient way to get access to candy. The function of the hitting behavior is tangible. They want the candy.
Which is a very challenging, high-stakes scenario for any behavior analyst to walk into.
For sure. So an intervention might involve putting candy on a fixed-time 5-minute schedule.
Yeah.
This means every 5 minutes, literally no matter what the child is doing, whether they were playing nicely, staring at the wall, or tying their shoes, the analyst walks over and gives them a piece of candy for free.
Completely non-contingent.
Right. But why does handing out free candy actually stop the violent hitting? Here's where it gets really interesting.
The mechanism at play is pure satiation. By saturating the child's environment with the preferred item, the analyst ensures the child reaches a physiological and psychological state of satiation.
So the intervention itself acts as an abolishing operation.
Exactly. The candy simply loses its value as a reinforcer.
It completely deflates the balloon. If the candy has no value, the behavior that historically produced the candy, the hitting, is abated. The child just doesn't care enough about the candy anymore to expend the physical energy required to hit someone for it.
And taking that a step further, comparing this NCR approach to another common intervention like functional communication training, or FCT, highlights a really crucial distinction you have to make for the exam.
This is a huge point of confusion for students. Let's break down why the brain responds differently to those two interventions. With FCT, you teach a child to sign or say "candy, please," instead of hitting their peers.
Right. With FCT, you are changing the skill repertoire. You're teaching a new socially acceptable behavior, but the underlying motivation, the EO, is still fully active.
The child is still deprived of candy.
Exactly. They still intensely want the candy. You've just given them a safer way to get it.
But with non-contingent reinforcement, you aren't teaching a new skill at all. The child isn't learning to say please. Instead, you are acting directly on the environment to change the baseline desire.
You are manipulating the AO to ensure the desire doesn't even exist in the first place.
You aren't fighting the craving, you're literally deleting the craving.
The underlying logic is beautiful when you think about it. One intervention changes the behavioral pathway, and the other removes the need to walk down the pathway at all.
Okay, so we have the volume up with EOs and deprivation, and the volume down with AOs and satiation. But if we were really deep diving into this, we have to go a level deeper into the origins of these operations.
We have to talk about how these states are actually formed in the human brain.
Right. Are we born with them, or do we learn them? Because this is a major focus on the BCBA exam.
The origins divide MOs into two distinct categories: unconditioned motivating operations, or UMOs, and conditioned motivating operations, CMOs.
The unconditioned ones, the UMOs, are essentially our biological hardware. We don't have to be taught these. If we look at human evolution, there are certain triggers that bypass learning entirely.
Think about a newborn baby. They don't need a learning history to find the onset of physical pain highly aversive.
Right, the drive to escape pain is an unlearned biological UMO. And the same goes for deprivation of food, water, oxygen, sleep, or extreme temperature changes.
Your nervous system is pre-programmed to respond to those specific physiological imbalances. No prior experience is required for a UMO to exert its value-altering and behavior-altering effects.
But the condition motivating operations, the CMOs, those are the software. These are entirely learned through our unique personal histories.
And literature breaks these learned triggers down into 3 specific types.
This is prime territory for tricky scenario questions. So let's make sure we unpack the mechanisms for each one. We have surrogate, transitive, and reflexive.
Let's start with surrogate. The mechanism behind the surrogate CMO, or CMOS, is heavily rooted in classical Pavlovian conditioning.
Right, pairing.
It occurs when a completely neutral stimulus is paired with an unconditioned motivating operation so frequently that the neutral stimulus actually takes on the exact same motivational power as the biological drive.
It acts as a stand-in, a surrogate for the real biological need. Let's use the classic factory whistle example from the Cooper text to see how the brain wires this together.
Oh, that's a perfect illustration.
Imagine you work at a factory, and every single day at exactly noon, a loud whistle blows, and you immediately walk to the cafeteria to eat lunch. You are genuinely biologically hungry. That's food deprivation, a UMO.
And your brain is pairing the piercing sound of that whistle with the physiological sensation of hunger pangs and insulin drops.
The pairing is happening continuously, hundreds of times over months or years.
All right.
Fast forward to a Saturday, you're at home, you just ate a massive heavy pancake breakfast at 11:30 a.m.
You are completely stuffed. You're in a state of satiation.
Total satiation. But at noon, you hear a train whistle in the distance that sounds exactly like the factory whistle. Suddenly, despite being physically full, you find yourself wandering into the kitchen, opening the fridge, and looking for a snack.
The whistle has become the CMOS. It's been paired so consistently with actual hunger that the mere sound of it temporarily alters your behavior.
It tricks your brain into making food seem desirable and evokes the behavior of searching for food, even when you aren't biologically deprived.
The brain is incredible. It literally hallucinates hunger based on an audio cue.
It's wild. All right, let's move to the transitive CMO or CMOT. I always tell people to think of the T standing for tool.
That's the best way to remember it. A CMOT is an environmental variable that alters the value of another stimulus. It suddenly makes a specific tool highly valuable because that tool is the only way to access your ultimate reinforcer.
To visualize the frustration of a CMOT, imagine I'm standing on my front porch. I want to get inside to sit on my couch and watch TV. My house key is in my pocket. I haven't thought about that piece of jagged metal all day long.
It has absolutely zero value to you.
Zero. But the second I try to turn the doorknob and realize the door is locked...
Your brain rewires.
Exactly. I don't care about my key until the door won't open. The locked door actually establishes the value of the key.
The locked door is the CMOT.
Suddenly, finding that key becomes the most reinforcing activity in my entire world. The locked condition transferred its motivational power onto the tool needed to solve the problem.
A key is the tool. The locked door is the condition that makes the tool valuable. It's that simple.
Okay, so that leaves the reflexive CMO, or CMOR.
This is arguably the most common conditioned operation we experience in modern daily life. It is the warning stimulus.
The CMOR systematically precedes some worsening or improvement of your situation. It's an environmental cue that basically screams, things are about to get bad.
You see the warning, and the desire to escape the impending doom becomes highly reinforcing. It reflexively establishes its own removal as a reinforcer.
Let's use a relatable example. We can use our cell phones for this. Imagine you're driving home from work feeling perfectly relaxed. Your phone buzzes, and you see a text message from your partner that just contains a single angry red face emoji. Nothing else.
Oh, no.
You know from your learning history that this specific emoji means a massive argument is waiting for you the second you walk through the front door.
So that text message containing the angry emoji is the warning stimulus, the CMOR.
Because you saw that text, suddenly the idea of pulling over and stopping at a noisy sports bar on the way home to watch a meaningless baseball game becomes incredibly reinforcing.
Yeah, you don't even like baseball.
I hate baseball. But I desperately wanted to delay the inevitable fight. The text message didn't make the sports bar more available. It made the escape that the sports bar provides far more desirable.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the distinction between making something available versus making something desirable perfectly sets up the single biggest pitfall for anyone studying human behavior.
Oh, this is the ultimate trap for students. The dreaded confusion between a motivating operation and a discriminative stimulus, the SD.
They are constantly confused because they share two major structural similarities. First, both are antecedents, meaning they occur before the behavior happens.
And second, both evoke behavior. They both prompt the organism to take physical action.
Right.
So if they both happen before the behavior and they both make you do something, how do you mathematically pull them apart when you're staring at a complex multiple-choice scenario on the exam?
You must evaluate the scenario through the lens of availability versus value. An SD, the discriminative stimulus, signals that a reinforcer is practically available.
It's the environment's way of telling you, if you engage in the behavior right now, the reward is here and ready for you.
Exactly. An MO, on the other hand, dictates how much you actually want the reward, completely regardless of whether it is available to you or not.
There's a scenario from Mach 1 involving a marathon runner that I think perfectly illustrates this trap. Picture a runner who has just crossed the finish line of a grueling marathon in the dead of summer. They are sweating profusely, their throat is burning, and they are severely deprived of fluids.
That intense physical dehydration is the motivating operation. Specifically, it's an unconditioned establishing operation. The biological need for water creates an overwhelming internal value.
The runner desperately needs water. But the runner doesn't just start grabbing blindly at thin air, right? They don't start licking the asphalt.
Hopefully not.
They look around the chaotic finish line, and 50 yards away, they spot a folding table covered in paper cups, with volunteers waving them over. That visual sight of the folding table is the SD.
The water table signals that the highly desired water is finally practically available in the physical environment.
The MO changed the internal value. The runner feels the burning need for water.
And the SD signaled the environmental availability. And the water is physically right over there if you walk toward it.
Okay, I want to challenge this with a really tricky scenario from the text, because this is where my brain gets tangled. Let's say it's Saturday afternoon. I'm lying on my couch, totally relaxed. Suddenly, my phone buzzes. It's a text from my highly annoying boss dumping a bunch of new project files on me and demanding I review them immediately.
Sounds like a nightmare.
It is. Now, my immediate behavior is to swipe the notification away and ignore him. Isn't that text message an SD telling me to ignore him? It happens right before the behavior, and it tells me what to do.
It is absolutely an antecedent, but it is definitely not an SD. The text message from your boss in that scenario is actually an MO, specifically a CMOR, a reflexive motivating operation.
But wait, why isn't it an SD? It triggered the behavior.
Because receiving a text from your boss with a pile of new work does not signal that escape from the work is suddenly available. Think about your learning history. When you're sitting at your desk in the office on a Tuesday and he physically hands you a stack of folders, can you just ignore him and escape the work?
No, definitely not.
Right, you can't. What the text message actually does is dramatically increase the value of escaping. It creates the intense internal desire to run away from your responsibilities.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see the matrix now. The text message is the MO. It turns the volume knob all the way up on my desire to throw my phone into the ocean.
It creates the want. Now ask yourself, what is the SD in that scenario? What signals that escape is actually available without severe punishment?
The SD is the fact that I'm sitting on my own couch on a Saturday.
Exactly.
Being at home, miles away from the office, signals that the behavior of ignoring the text is practically available. I can safely ignore him today and I won't get fired immediately, unlike if I ignored him to his face on a Tuesday.
The environment provides the safe opportunity. The boss's text creates the urgent need to escape. That's your MO. Being at home on a Saturday provides the available opportunity to actually execute that escape. That's your SD.
When you can cleanly separate the internal value from the external availability, you unlock a completely new way of analyzing human action. So, what does this all mean for you listening right now?
That's the big question.
Whether you're in the trenches cramming for your BCBA exam, or you're a parent trying to decipher why your kid is suddenly acting out, or you're just trying to figure out your own bizarre daily habits. Mastering, establishing, and abolishing operations changes your entire perspective.
It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that our behavior isn't just random.
We aren't just acting out of a fixed, stubborn personality. Every single thing we do is highly dependent on invisible, constantly shifting states of deprivation and satiation.
And this raises an important question, something for you to mull over long after this deep dive ends. We started this whole conversation by talking about how society treats personality as a permanent trait. Think about how our culture constantly praises people for having incredible ironclad willpower when they successfully avoid bad habits or stick to a strict diet. We view them as morally superior.
Yeah, we say things like, oh, they're just so disciplined, I could never resist that donut. They just have better willpower than I do.
But based on the behavioral mechanics we just decoded regarding abolition operations, is willpower even a real psychological construct?
Oh, wow.
Or are the most highly disciplined people simply the most skilled at secretly manipulating their own environments? Are they just expertly engineering their own AOs, like eating a massive healthy meal before walking into a bakery to ensure their problematic temptations completely lose their value before they even have to make a conscious choice?
So they aren't actually fighting the craving in some heroic battle of the mind. They've just manipulated the environment to turn the volume knob all the way down so the craving never physically exists in the first place. That is a wild, completely different way to look at the world.
Well, that is all the time we have for today's deep dive. Keep analyzing your environments and keep looking for those invisible volume knobs.
They are everywhere once you start looking.
They really are, and we want to invite you to continue this BCBA study series with us. Make sure to follow Amethyst Therapy Services for more resources. You can visit the website at www.amethysttherapyservices.com.
Or you can email the team at info@amethysttherapyservices.com.
Thanks for listening, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.